Sit thee down, beautiful listeners, and welcome to Men in Sheds, episode 6. From within a very, very chilly shed.
It's a little bit, it's a little bit frigid, shall we say.
Yeah, that's the atmosphere.
That's the atmosphere.
So
soon to be congenial, thanks to us two.
Well, we'll see. So this time round, we're going to talk about Top Gear, aren't we? And the Grand Tour.
The Grand Tour.
It's going to be a special.
Yeah.
That's what the whole thing is. It's a special episode where we're not going to talk about anything else but Top Gear and the Grand Tour.
Forever.
Because there's so much.
There's so much to say.
But we are going to use our usual format. We're going to go past, present, and future.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
So we're going to go to ye oldie Top Gear of the past. And before we get into that, I'll just say, for those that don't know, the Grand Tour is...
Are you going to do an advert now?
No, well, I'm getting paid by Amazon.
The Grand Tour available now on Amazon Prime.
The Grand Tour is the previous Top Gear team who previously did Top Gear, and previous to that, the Three Stooges, I think. Yeah. Probably. It's... So you got the new old Top Gear, and you got the old new Top Gear, and then you got the new old Top Gear, and then you got the old new Top Gear, haven't you? And then you've got the new Grand Tour.
Define those for me, because even I lost that one. Right, old new Top Gear. Is that the one with
old new Top Gear?
Old new Top Gear is the one with LeBlanc. No,
isn't it? No one. It's an enigma. That's what it is now.
Okay.
It is an organic object that cannot be defined from any angle. It changes. It's like the Fast and Furious titles. It could be anything. You don't know anymore.
Is it Schrodinger's gear?
It is Schrodinger's gear. Well,
go on.
In the past, it was just Top Gear.
There were time when that were just the one.
And do you remember old Top Gear with Chris Godfrey? You remember Chris Godfrey?
I remember. I don't know if I remember it, but I know that didn't Angela Rippon do?
She did.
And Kate Humble. Humble did a bit for old Top Gear. Old. Or is it old? Ye oldie Top Gear.
Ye oldie Top Gear. Yeah. And I mean, the one I remember particularly was Chris Godfrey, because of the way you pronounced the names of car manufacturers, like in his own way. He wouldn't go with the public opinion, so it was Nissan, and it was Mitsubishi. He was like, when he'd say Mitsubishi, it were a mess. I think even Ford, he were like Ford. He were different.
Did he say Peugeot rather than Peugeot?
Oh, that doesn't sound a bit posh. That doesn't it?
Quite like Peugeot.
Yeah. It's like when posh people say Jaguar. And the Americans, say Jaguar, and James May says Jaguar.
Does he?
He does, he says Jaguar.
I didn't realise that.
Yeah, which is wrong, but it sounds better, doesn't it? But I like Peugeot.
Yeah, Peugeot. Well, I quite like, in a way, going off on a tangent, I quite like it if you, pronouncing the manufacturer almost in the language in which it's... Yeah. You see, because it's quite interesting, because, a lot of Americans get a lot of stick for language-based stuff. But actually, they do say Nissan, which is how it's supposed to be said. They say Hyundai, but they say Hyundai, don't they? Which is more correct than Hyundai, like us. And so, fair play to him on that one.
Well, good for Chris Godfrey.
Yeah,
exactly. He kept it real back in the day.
He started all this shenanigans off.
He don't get any more. But
it wasn't Quentin Wilson involved. He was.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
As it segues into sort of a more. That was the tail end. I'm
gonna make a.
Go on.
I'm going to start this.
With a statement.
I'm going to prefix it with the brilliance of Clarkson.
Oof.
Controversial. But, okay, hear me out.
There are many fanboys there not saying that's not controversial.
Top Gear, like 90s Top Gear, changed so radically when Clarkson came on board.
That's true.
And it can't be discredited. It was massive.
Yeah, it was a big shift.
It was massive. And I think he brought a producer with him, or the other way around. I can't remember the name of the producer.
Is that Wilson? Is it Wilson? Who's still with him now?
Probably. Yeah, the one who's with him now.
Yeah.
And they completely changed that show because it was so dire. It was so tedious. And when Clarkson came along, they formed that team.
It were dry, wasn't it?
And you'd got Clarkson, you'd got Quentin Wilson, who was your, car dealer.
Hey, bit of that.
You'd got Vicky Butler Henderson. Yeah. One for the lads,
one for the lads. One for the lads.
And you got Tiffany Dell.
The racing driver.
Yeah.
And helmsman.
And that radically changed the whole thing. And the whole show, like for instance, like Clarkson would do a review of the new Mercedes SUV, you know, I don't know, it's not S-Class, is it? Whatever it is, M-Class. And he would see how much cheese he could fit in the back. And that at the time
was radical, that is.
People were laughing their way all the way through to the next Sunday. Or was it Thursday night on BBC Two? Was that when Top Gear
you're
was on?
right. I think you're right. No Sunday night.
No Sunday night. They were getting Thursday to Thursday on them lads. And I have a very vivid memory of a particular episode where, for me, I definitely had a reaction, and not a necessarily great one, to the attitude of that episode, and it were the M5, BMW M5. And at the start of the episode, they did the kind of Back to the Future type intro. You had the flashes, and then the M5 just came racing past the camera and did a massive handbrake turn. And Tiffany Dell got out.
Of course.
Overexcited. As Tiffany Dell is always permanently a puppy of a man, permanently overexcited by his own driving. Got out and ran to the camera and said something along the lines, I've been to the future, you know, and it's amazing. And I remember walking away from that episode and kind of like, I enjoyed it, but I really felt there was like this yobbish element that had come in,
permeated the series,
and I had a discomfort with that because we do, don't we, with cars? We're like, when we're doing the yobbish behaviour, it's like I'm just showing them what I can do.
This isn't yobbish. This has a point to it. Sort of thing.
They want to see it. They want to see it.
Yeah.
But when someone else does it, you go,
what a bit of a prune,
what a
showy
rat.
Yeah.
You know, I were at Bruntingthorpe one time. We were doing Performance Ford. We were doing a feature, and there were a BMW. This guy just turns up in a BMW.
To a Performance Ford.
And he was just like on the track because you got all the stuff on track. You know, these MG test day was there. These people were testing MG and they crashed an MGF. Was it MDF? An MGF into field with two people in back. They were taking customers out. It was bad.
That's scary.
So a part of what were going on where a guy were drifting this and he was doing like proper massive drifts down the actual runway. He was doing side to side. And we'd been testing our Sierras. And I remember one of the guys as this very talented BMW driver were doing it, and this one guy just goes prick like that, and it's like, really, like, because we're here doing almost exactly the same thing, but we're
doing it proper.
We do it proper, Anyway, so Top Gear changed radically with the brilliance. I'm going to call it the brilliance of Clarkson.
TM.
TM. It made a massive difference, and that can't be underestimated because what Clarkson started to do was he started to review cars like the everyman, except more like the everyman than the everyman, because he would tap into the kind of emotional responses we had to certain brands. Like previous to that, the way car journalism worked, and to be honest, a lot of car journalism still works outside of Clarkson, is people objectively review cars. And that's a massive mistake because there's no entertainment and it doesn't validate anything in real life. So when they get the new Daewoo and they just pragmatically go through it, saying, it's got a 1.8 and it's got 5 doors and it costs this, you don't do that. Clarkson will go, it's a Daewoo. And that's a big problem. And he would like tap into what we all think, or what we now think, because he's told us what we didn't know we thought about Daewoo's. And
it was his famous kind of non-review of the Vectra, wasn't it?
It
was so dull. So dull that it did not warrant a review, pretty much.
And that was quite funny because what he did in the Vectra, I remember that. And this is the thing about Clarkson, you remember. The Vectra was the first car that had a clock that got its time from the radio,
from outer space,
from space time, and it got it from the radio. And Clarkson made this quip that because it takes so long for the signal to get to the clock, it's always 1 minute out, like behind or something. And it was wrong, it was completely wrong. It's probably what Vectra lost their collective, whatever about. But he did that, and he really transformed that series, and it started to become way more entertaining.
Yeah.
Definitely more yobbish.
Yeah.
It wasn't. It didn't lean right.
Yeah.
There was no politics to it or anything like that. And Top Gear kind of disappeared, didn't it?
I'm trying to think why that. Do you think maybe that was because you had Clarkson's sort of very mad segments, but they still tried to hold on to that? You know, it was neither one nor the other in terms of, you know, they were still trying to, or certain parts of the show were still trying to concentrate on, you know, cars that you could go out and buy and objectively review them, and it didn't fit. Maybe, I don't know.
Well, I think, you know, what Clarkson was trying to convince them to do didn't fit.
Yeah.
I think Clarkson and his producer, I think they wanted
Andy Willman.
Willman, right? They knew what people wanted. They wanted it in a studio. They wanted a crowd.
Yeah.
They wanted a racetrack. They only wanted to do the most extreme cars possible, go around the world. But Top Gear the BBC were never going to accept that, because at that point, that's Clarkson basically saying, I'd like £10 million a year, please.
Do me own show.
And a massive production team. And they didn't. So I think that's what happened. And then we got Motorworld.
Yeah.
And Motorworld was the validation of the new Top Gear.
Yeah.
Because, and they were great tapes. I mean,
they would have been tapes back in the day.
And I remember they were amazing. And you've got things, you know, like the Capri from up just north of Stoke, the four-wheel drive Cosy powered Capri versus the was it the Jag or the Aston Martin at the time, and drag racing them, and you got the young Super Lemon or Hyper Lemon, I can't remember which one it was, you know, because it was like 1,000 brake horsepower, and like that were a big deal, and he had tuned skylines and all sorts on it, and he really went into these kind of different areas, but what he was doing was obviously it was focused on racetrack because I guess it was cheaper and easier.
Yeah,
and
get them all in one place.
The reviews, and because they were fast, and because they wanted to do the skids.
Do the skids for kids.
Do the skids, and I think that's why it ended up like that. But there was a lot of stupidness, like stupid explosions.
Yeah.
There were one where I think he bought some like Chavs Sierra and pushed it off a cliff in a. It's
like I say, it's proto old new Top. Well, you know, the Three Stooges Top Gear, isn't it?
It was proto Top
with the
Gear,
you know sort of.
But with just Clarkson.
Yeah.
And at the time, he was doing his war specials, Great Battles.
Yeah.
And do you remember he had a talk show?
I do not remember the talk show. I can't imagine a talk show with him as the.
He had a Clarkson
far too opinionated.
He had a Clarkson talk show. He were already building that concept of him being interviewing people and people coming in and there being a live crowd. It was all there.
Yeah.
Everything apart from the specific presenters, but he was bringing in Vicky Butler Henderson. He knew that had a lot. Yeah, he knew that a girl, woman squealing whilst driving around a racetrack in a car.
Bit Andy.
Yeah, but Andy, oh, she can drive. Look at that. That's
novel, isn't it? A girl who
can drive. That's completely novel. And that was all there. But like Quentin Wilson, let's face it, like I got respect for Quentin Wilson because he's gone on to do that classic car show.
Yeah.
Was it with Jodie Kidd?
Yeah, they had a bit of a short. I don't know whether that's still going or it was a short-lived.
It had a really naff start where they went to like an underground bunker and it was all kind of a James Bond.
Yeah.
But the actual content were good.
Yeah, I think the problem for Quentin Wilson is he's got a bit like Nadell really. He's got a shtick, hasn't he? And it's quite an obvious visual and audio kind of shtick, and ultimately behind it is very clever, and he's got, but like you say, he's almost a bit marred by that sort of wheeler dealer sort of,
I think his look was the issue because he was really good at imitating the Clarkson kind of brand.
That's true.
So he would do things like he'd be like reviewing a new Cadillac.
Yeah.
And he'd drive it half on the road, half off to show how soft it was, and he would describe it as handling like a herd of retarded wildebeest was one of his best lines. So he had the great lines.
Got it,
And Tiffany Dell Just an incredible driver.
Absolutely, yeah.
Genuinely brilliant driver.
That's it. He can be a bit over-facing at times, but you can't. And like you say, the enthusiasm. I mean, that's
I
the
find
lovely.
the enthusiasm a bit much.
It's a bit scary, but it's genuine. At least you can say that.
Yeah,
you know?
like he can't really like drive in an excited fashion. And do a sort of deadpan review, like the other, like we see now in the shows.
Yeah.
He's like, it's like, oh, I'm coming around here. Oh, no, and you're like, okay,
tone it down, lad. Tone it down.
It's a lot of fun. And all of that.
Yeah.
Has moved to fifth gear because fifth gear basically just took the existing Top Gear format.
Yeah.
And just didn't really change. They didn't change the cast. You know, they just moved to Channel 5, and it's only now, like when you watch Fifth Gear, that you realise like how tired that format is.
now is. Well, I think it stopped now or something. I think it might have finished. I can't.
Has it?
I'm not a huge watcher of Channel 5, I have to say.
No.
But I have a feeling, it's either it's stopped and it was recently, but
it should be. It should be because
like you say, it were tired when it moved over.
It's just crap.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but like they've put a lot of the old footage, up
on YouTube. That's it.
And you click on it and you watch it, and Johnny's good.
This is again.
I got a lot of respect for Johnny.
I get a frustration with being. I think, like you say, in some respects, with Fifth Gear, Johnny is pigeonholed a bit, because I used to watch Fifth Gear, and I used to... Johnny were a bit sort of like, I don't know, at times he could be I don't know, he were controversial in my mind. He was just, I'm not sure, he's a bit sort of Marmite, And then since having watched him outside of Fifth Gear, I love him, he's a lovely guy, and, his flux capacitor thing is just nuts.
Amazing.
Very knowledgeable guy. Yeah. So I think,
for those that don't know, he's got a drag racing electric car, hasn't he?
Is it an all reliant or something?
Yeah,
it's
something
a very
like that,
small sort of fiberglass tub, batteries everywhere, ridiculous.
If you do a search on YouTube, fully charged, Bobby Llewellyn, he did an episode, went out with him, and he does the skins and stuff like that.
I think that's it. With Fifth Gear, we were a bit pigeonholed, which again, like you say, the format made
the thing is, you always have to remember, right? Whenever you see someone on camera, there is pre-production in terms of script writing, and there is a massive amount of influence from the director who's there on the day.
Got the editing,
and then you've got the post-production. And the thing is, like, you have to respect how those additional people can change your perception of the person you see on camera. If, for instance, Tiffany Dow, who we've criticised for his rapport when driving sideways, was doing just a voiceover of himself driving sideways, then it would work. Especially if it was scripted well for him.
Yeah, absolutely.
But for some reason, they choose to film it in a particular way. And I just want to say this.
Hot take.
I've never warmed to Jason Plato.
No, he's not. I don't think he's it's not easily warmable too, as far as I'm concerned. But especially when I know, touring cars, contact sport, Robin's racing, but
he's done some amazing stuff. Up on two wheels, being pushed beyond 90 degrees and managed to get it back in line. Incredible driver. And I'm not saying a bad presenter.
No.
He's all right presenter. I just don't.
No, I agree.
I don't think he has that kind of. He doesn't like. He's got an ego, and that's going to bring us on to kind of what Top Gear's been built on now. Not now, but how do I describe it? Like, you've got your 90s Top Gear, and then you've got what that became.
Yes.
The 2001.
I think it is about 2000, very early 2000.
26 seasons. Something ridiculous. Of the Clarkson's new Top Gear, as we kind of, as it's known in pop culture. And that was...
Well, that is, like you say, that is Top Gear to many people.
That is Top Gear.
This may have been a history lesson
for those.
We have got
people who will be learning to drive next year. The year after, maybe. The year after, who were born when it started.
That's it, who've never known anything but. Reruns on Dave and all that sort of stuff. I mean, I don't think the old Top Gear gets reruns on Dave every 5 minutes.
Sure
and that kind of.
I'm sure it doesn't.
Yeah.
And we got that, and that was this concept of live audience, racetrack, films. They call them actual films. What they do with the the challenges and the trips, and
Yeah.
and then you've
The
got
specials, yeah.
Clarkson, Hammond, and
It was an Australian at first, wasn't it? I
Large-
can't remember his
large
name at all. I think it was
Australian.
only for first series he was in that, and then May.
and he did reviews, didn't he? But he was there mainly for your kind of car pricing. So
Yeah.
it was like you don't realise how much that show changed until you look back.
Yeah. I think that's it. A lot of people sort of know it from maybe third series, third
That's
series,
like
fourth, when it's
where it
really
hit its
kicked on. That's
stride.
it, yeah.
But before that, it was quite difficult. It wasn't. It seemed funny at the time. It doesn't seem funny
Yeah.
now when you look back at it. And you had the letters written in, and you
Yeah.
had and Coolwall went.
Yeah, that's
eventually,
true.
and-
Yeah, I mean, I think like with that, maybe that was the BBC's input, or it was a little bit of a just say, well, we'll try it with this guy.
I think that was
that
it.
kind of. Oh, I don't know what the word
Like
is.
either
now.
they compromised.
That's the one I was looking for.
because
That
of
was
what
it.
BBC wanted, or they thought that was the best foot forward
Yeah.
to start with.
Yeah, just to get a series under their belt, sort of thing.
Yeah. And the big thing, what they brought to it more than anything, was this kind of banter
Yeah.
combined with high production value footage.
Yeah, that moved the game on a
luxury,
lot.
yeah.
Every series just got more and more, like you say, that kind of high value, high dollar feel to
Yeah.
it. It was the production's consistently been impressive, and I
Yeah.
think
That can't be knocked. You can
No.
knock anything about Top Gear. You cannot knock
Yeah.
the production value
Yeah.
and the bravery of some of it. I remember the
Absolutely.
Focus RS in Asbo Orange.
ST, yeah,
ST, was it ST or was it RS? I don't remember.
ST, Focus ST, came in
And they
the
flipped
Asbo.
the footage.
Yeah,
of
because
the-
it was a wet day,
it was a wet
wasn't it?
day, yeah.
Yeah.
Very brave
Yeah.
stuff to do.
Yeah.
Worked very well, and that hadn't been done. I don't know of anywhere apart
Huge
from
filters
in,
and that kind of, yeah.
Even in Motor World, they
Yeah.
weren't doing that.
Yeah.
As such.
It was very, sort of artistically, heavily processed sort of, filters and colours and the mood of it, wasn't
Yeah.
it? The mood of the piece was very much apparent. I mean, can you remember that were later on, the LFA, when they had parts of it in a manga, just cut to sort of like a manga style, being chased by aliens, and incredible when you think of what it is really, which is Sunday evening show on BBC,
Yeah,
amazing.
and the reason for that is because what we've had the digital film revolution.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
been going on in the background.
Yeah.
And the fact that you've got like red cameras and stuff like that now.
drone footage and
Footage, and it's all digital footage that can be easily dealt with and post-processed, and it's not terribly expensive. You're not using up film, for example.
Yeah.
So that's what's given us things like Planet Earth and stuff like that. It's made a big difference, and Top Gear is where it really
I would say, was at the vanguard of that, sort
Yeah.
of pushing that
Yeah.
envelope, really,
Yeah.
definitely, as you say, you can't knock it for that, yeah.
and they focused on supercars, luxury cars, but at the same time, and completely moving away from the concept of objectively reviewing cars.
Yeah.
That was that's where Fifth Gear and Top Gear took a fork in the road.
Yeah, absolutely, I'd
Completely.
agree there, yeah.
And it was a little bit about banter and things like that. Now, what happened partway into that, which is easy to forget, is Richard Hammond's accident.
That's a lot. I mean, when you look at the series, that's a long time back, isn't it? Really, season-wise, and I think that, like you say, maybe you could argue that I'm sure they didn't plan it this way, but they got that initial hump, that surge of popularity, and then that happened, and everything kind of went stratospheric after that, didn't it? Really.
And the build up to that was bringing James May on board and forming this team, and then doing the road trips. That was
the
big
specials
thing.
and
They did the film, the road trips, and the big one, of course, was the Florida based one, the Southern Road Trip. Because they went through a lot. I think it was that and the GT. They did the 24-hour Le Mans, didn't they, or something similar together? The three, they were all.
It's like 24 Hours brick car, wasn't it? With that
was a brick
BMW
car,
on and a diesel-powered brick car, and
it was a bit weird because we had the UK version of NASCAR, and it was all a bit of different time, and all kinds of things were happening. And
I think, like you said, they sort of built up to that, don't it? Because if you look back at before you get the specials, you get the films, and they're getting almost like they're getting longer and longer and more involved, aren't they? Like the one with the Reliant Robin, where they try and launch the Reliant Robin.
yeah.
You know, I mean, that's pretty much. I mean, that's a normal episode, if you can call it. Still got star and reason behind the car and all that thing. I think, but really, I mean, that's the bulk of the episode, really, isn't it? And I think from there, it was not far to start to think, well, let's make this into, like you say, a full special. Let's do something even more outrageous and more ridiculous, and kind of supercars to that French bridge and all that sort of. You know, there's that blend from normal episodes to bigger features to quite special features to quite hello in the studio, bang, we're off to Florida.
If you look at the facets, so there's all these different facets that all actually fit together. So the studio, Top Gear had this really strong rule of a 50% gender split in the studio, and so what we were being sold was the concept that cars are appreciated equally by men and women. That changed the landscape of Top Gear's appeal massively. That suddenly meant that this wasn't something you watched with your dad on a Thursday
night.
It's what you watched with your partner, your girlfriend, your friends, whatever.
Your kids.
On a Sunday. So they did that. They focused on luxury and exclusivity. So we were kind of given this little portal into that
because
world.
they were still reviewed in, like you say, that everyman style. So it's like, if you had a Rolls Royce, what would you be complaining about, maybe?
So,
or what
they had aspiration. So
absolutely.
you've got wide appeal, you've got aspiration. But then this is
the key,
which they hooked a little bit into the cool world. Which then made Top Gear look like it was the arbiter of whether or not a car is cool or whatever. And that was very powerful, controversial and strong. They brought starring a reasonably priced car, gave a celebrity acceptance to cars, which is another big thing.
So it unearthing a bit of car history in your celebs.
So it wasn't just that you watched this show with your girlfriend to aspire for luxury sports cars, but at the same time you shared that kind of cultural appreciation with
all these
celebs and stars. Now, that all did that quite nicely, but what was clever about the films or the road trips and the challenges was it brought the emotional aspect of camaraderie between friends through cars, but also the emotional appeal of cars which are objectively bad.
Well, that's it. Pretty much every single one, isn't it? They all say, you know, I've driven, you know, the sort of sum up is always, I've driven this car for a week. And like I say, ultimately, it's objectively awful. But I love it. And, well, I mean, Hammond brought that one from
Oscar, he brought Oscar back.
Oscar from that African.
The early Opel.
Brought Opel Cadet, wasn't it, or something? And brought that one back with him. That's it.
He did. And we just kept getting resold this reaffirming message every time we watched those road trips. Was that if you are forced to drive a car around, it becomes like a pet, it becomes like a friend, it becomes like an appendage, it becomes part of you emotionally. And that message was sold to us over and over again. And it was things like the Hilux, the unkillable Hilux, you know, where the conclusion from that was they preserved it. They decided we can't do anything worse to this Hilux because it survived so much, and as a result of that, we now all believe that Toyota Hiluxes are indestructible.
You can set fire to them and they'll be all right.
And that led up to Richard Hammond's accident, and prior to that, you know, Clarkson said in his column and stuff like that, or out of his column. That's probably often from Jeremy Clarkson's column. He said that they always had an agreement, was that if one of them died filming, that they would just announce it at the start of the show and do a completely deadpan thing, because the whole thing was this kind of it was men bonding, but doing so in a way of like they would never show emotion.
It's that that very masculine.
It was overly masculine. It was a bit sad. It was a bit conservative. It's a bit from the past. But they had that. Now, what happened was Richard Hammond obviously was filming a scene with a rocket car, rocket powered car.
It was land speed. It must have been not land speed record, but
he was trying to break a record at the time.
I can't remember which one.
And there was an accident, and there was controversy following that accident as to who was to blame. Because, you know, it was big. It was a big deal. Either way, this coincided with Facebook becoming
quite dominant,
a significant part of our lives, an ongoing part of our, for a lot of people, working day.
Yes, yes.
So what we had was Hammond had his accident, and that got reported on social media, and became viral. Yes, massively viral. Yeah, and to kind of give the significance of how viral it was, this was a time when people were they were sharing the episodes of Top Gear via
finalgear.com.
Torrenting. They were torrenting episodes because it was so popular worldwide. Yeah, so the outpouring was huge.
Yeah, it was global pretty much. Yeah,
and the result of it was it reinforced this massive bond between these three presenters. Yeah. And who did get gushy about what was happening and worried about their mate who they love and everything else. Yeah. And it kind of showed how strong that unison was between these three people, this trifecta. Yes. They were. So post Hammond accident, Top Gear had this enormous support. I mean, absolutely, we're talking national.
Could do no wrong, global, sort of.
They could do no wrong at this point.
Especially Hammond,
Especially Hammond. Hammond cashed in immediately.
Yeah, with a book.
As you do.
As you do.
And what's really interesting is if you read that book, it reinforces what the Top Gear team thinks about themselves in the public eye. And they really do think they're terribly wacky. Yeah. The first chapter, I think it's the first chapter of Hammond's book, you know, As You Do, which in itself is this kind of sarcastic, I'm wackier than you statement, isn't it? It's just like, oh, I'm so wacky, and it's so normal to be wacky that I just brush it off as part of like normal life.
That's just me. Yeah.
And it contains, I mean, one story in that is how the production team was out in a bar and they had a challenge to take the ball from the snooker table or pool table and get it into another bar. I mean, it was just like, oh, mad lads.
You're mad. You're crazy.
Classified bonkers. Get them locked up. Wow. Crazy. And it was that kind of like,
wizard stuff.
I'm so wacky, but it had appeal at the time.
Yeah.
And it contained a lot of anecdotal stories about the absolute nightmare he had filming the Polar Expedition episode.
Yeah, compared to the other two got it very gushy, really.
And his weeks of training and just wanting to kill this other person that he was involved with. And you know, the hard shit was there. It undressed. Yeah. And it undressed a lot of the superficialities that kind of made it look easy.
Yeah, very much so.
And it wasn't there. So you got that. Plus, you know, there was some kind of wacky things that he had done in his life. Yeah. You know, one of his stories is getting home during a flood and deciding to park his Porsche and just put on his waders and walk all the way home through a flood. And that's unusual.
Yeah.
That's unusual to do that. And his past as well, and his car passed. Yeah. You know, he had a car called Wally car.
Really?
Yeah, his family had it. I think it was a bright yellow Land Rover Defender 110.
Yeah, there's a lot of love for the Defender.
He's got
isn't there? A lot of love for it.
It's the one car I see him in the most actually outside of Top Gear, and the family loved Wally car, and he had to sell it because his tax bill came in one year and he hadn't planned for it and whatever, and that's quite, you know, we can all warm to a story,
all relate to that kind of
like
thing.
That. Yeah. So post accident Top Gear, you've got this massive amount of support and this trio that we could not stop loving. Absolutely, and at this point, the right wing sort of conservative politics had started to accrue into the show. So you take the Hilux stuff. Yeah, Clarkson was reprimanded for deciding to just rub the Hilux against a stone wall and stuff like that, because Clarkson's a really interesting character because he's the everyman's toff.
Well, this is it, isn't he? But he brands himself as an everyman and lives in Chipping Norton and sees
couldn't be anything but his
Liz
entire
Early
life.
now and again, you know, dining with the Murdochs or whatever. Yeah, he is absolutely. It's a oxymoron in a way.
Yeah, with a lot of the
With a
moron,
moron,
the oxy. You know, and that's a deliberate character that he puts out there. And what he is this really odd chap who he's been born into privilege.
Yeah.
And effectively rejects that to drum up, you know, he plays to the gallery, he tries to drum up support from, you know, the plebs that we are, whilst constantly referencing and teasing us.
Yeah.
And what he's done a lot of the times, a lot of his analogies and his metaphoricals and everything else go back to posh food. He's always done this whole thing of, you know, if an Astra is like a fillet steak tartar.
Yeah.
You know, that's what it's like, isn't it? And you're like, I have no idea what that feels like.
What's
actually, that is actually that has done less for making this a reality for me than if you just talked about the car.
That's it. That's not a kind of simile I can relate to.
He's done that constantly, you know, kind of kissing upward to celebrities whilst mocking other celebrities. You know, he's all part of that, and he's the everyman's toff.
Yeah.
You know, he used to hang out in Utoxeter.
Really?
You know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah, he used to hang out in Utoxeter. He used to live Derby way, didn't he? And,
okay.
Derby University, I think. And
it's all new to me.
He used to come down Utoxeter, He mentioned it. He mentions the moorland vista and the roaming hills.
See, we're not the only ones. We're not the only ones.
He knows. I'll agree with him on that.
I'll give him that one.
Give him that one. But he's in no way like the rest of them. In no way whatsoever. And he has some quite old-fashioned viewpoints.
Yes.
And I don't know if they're really him or not.
He's a very complex character in that regard, isn't he? Like you say, there's when you talk about, you know, kissing up to certain celebrities and mocking others, and it's a complex web that he weaves about, you know, who's you never quite know who's worth mocking, who's not worth, you know, that kind of it's a bit that's definitely an enigmatic part of his character,
And that's
shifting sands of
that was a culture that was replicated in things like Family Guy, where because they were pop culture, they had the power, to kind of leverage celebrity gossip, because that's what it was, a celebrity gossip age. And it became okay and normal for presenters on shows to make some quite outlandish statements about people or whatever, while simultaneously clamouring their way up the celebrity pole
themselves.
And that's what we had. So we have this kind of buffoonery, and sadly, these quite old-fashioned views.
Yeah, which I think, like you say, more and more presented themselves as the series went on. Really, I know what you mean, because he got in trouble for driving that disco up the Scottish mountain as well, didn't he? And that kind of thing, ruining habitat and all that sort of.
Well, he was kind of, he was from the establishment but anti-establishment, and well, crikey, we've seen the effect of that now, haven't we? There's Chinese bombers flying now, because of that nonsense.
Yeah, very true.
That people spout from.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, have a little break now.
Should I have a brew?
And then we'll talk about Top Gear Present. Or the grand.
Yeah, I was going to say, the forking of Top Gear.
What could possibly go wrong?
TG and GT, Right, let's have a brew. Right, we're back.
Righto.
Brew done.
The Grand Tour.
The Grand TGGT.
So we're gonna segue somehow
from the might of the Three Stooges
to the present.
To the present.
And we're thinking that we sort of like just summarised the fracas situation.
Yeah. What's interesting I think is different viewpoints on. I think, some people would argue, wouldn't they? I imagine that Top Gear or Top TG before it morphed into GT, kind of it went out on a high, didn't it? Really, and it was unfortunate. This fracas was an unfortunate sort of episode. I think other people might say it was maybe getting a bit stale, or
Well, I mean, you ejected out of Top Gear at what season?
I bailed at about 50, series 50. I watched a couple in 16, and that kind of confirmed me. You stuck with it though, didn't you?
I stuck with it because, well,
Good man.
It was like bloody roulette every Sunday, and it was the same. Everyone was saying the same thing.
That's very true. I think that's why. Yeah.
You'd put it on, the music would play, and you'd think, "Be a good one."
What am I going to get this week?
Be a good one. Be a road trip, but not a road trip where Hammond constantly bumps into each other's cars, or be a road trip where they don't try to sabotage each other, or be a road trip where Clarkson doesn't, show him off to be a gorilla when he modifies his car with a hammer. Let's just be original, be different, and
that's a good. I have to say, talking on the that sort of emotional bond that you were talking about in the last, before I brew, that was one of the key points for me on the Bolivia thing, where they did their sort of traditional, I love my car, that sort of stuff, and Hammond, he'd shot himself in the foot a bit by buying seemingly the only non-working Land Cruiser in the world, and just said how much he loved it, and like I say, knowing his background with bringing that Oliver back from Africa and all that sort of stuff, nice, he really connected with his car, and then it's not really a spoiler, is it? But at the end, to all park at the top of that very large hill and do the whole, oh, hang on, I've forgotten something, but I won't run the short way around the front of the vehicle. I'll run round the back, and then I'll talk to, I can't remember if it was Clarkson, I think it must have been Clarkson, who can in full view see my car rolling away and completely ignore it, and then seemingly just go, oh well, never mind, eh? And it's all like, well, hang on, are you having an emotional bond with this car, or are you not? The shtick is kind of like, okay, we all knew it was going to happen, or something daft was going to happen, but you sort of over... And that, I think, was the first major time for me where it overplayed itself, and I was sort of like, and I think you're right, like you say, all those sort of... When you fired it up in series 20 or 21, and you were thinking, let's have a good, let's not. And you, like you say, you're kind of listing those sort of tropes of Top Gear, aren't you? And thinking, look, I don't mind them, but you don't have to do a paint-by-numbers job on them. There can be some originality in it. And it was always interesting, I thought, when you realise, and it sounds so naive, but maybe you're watching Top Gear and you don't realise, you didn't maybe think it was scripted. There were script editors, and they made reference to it, didn't they?
One scripted, best unscripted show in America.
Exactly, and they were made a bit of a joke of, Yeah. And I think by the end, series 20, 21, it was very obvious it was scripted, and painfully you got these plot points, and it's like we must hit these.
The death of entertainment is formula.
Exactly.
And it became formulaic, and you kind of knew what was going to happen. It was painful, and they had this whole, what could possibly go wrong? And you're just like, oh, please. They're just so pleased with themselves, so smug about it. And it's like, what could possibly go on? Well, you're going to contrive a load of very badly done accidents in
air quotes.
And I think for me that, I remember that the Land Cruiser being rolled down the dune, and I think there's an important lesson that needs to be learnt from that is the cars are characters.
Yeah.
You don't pick on the characters.
No, exactly.
And that's, you don't form an emotional bond, like you say.
Yeah.
And then just
jettison it.
Kill one off.
Jettison one for a cheap laugh.
And I think the low moment, I get a bit confused, but one low moment was definitely the caravan, when he went caravanning.
Yeah.
And they burnt the caravan down. And it was like terrible. It was absolutely awful.
Yeah.
And another one was when they built their own caravans.
Yes.
And of course, we had one of them rolled off the top of the cliff, and it was terrible. It was absolutely awful. It was terrible. And that brings me on to this issue, the big issue I have for people. Because, so we were starting to get this division.
Yeah.
This people were becoming divided. It was divisive material where some people would, it was like when Big Brother came on every year, and you'd get these people going, I'm not going to bother this year. And they were saying this kind of like, whereas if BBC will listen, it's like, I'm not even going to bother this year. And they like write it in capitals on, their car forum or whatever, as if the head of BBC didn't want Top Gear rid of it anyway.
Exactly.
They were saying that. And what we got was a lot of people saying, this has become ridiculous, it's stupid, I'm not going to watch it anymore, I'm watching Fifth Gear, that's how bad things are.
Yeah.
And Clarkson would do interviews, and in those interviews he would say, we have to do the funny falling over.
Yeah.
Because that's what the BBC want.
Yeah.
That's what we're told we have to do.
Yeah.
And
as I say, an enigmatic personality.
He would position himself as above that behaviour.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like, well, good.
Yeah.
So he goes off and he does these little specials again, like Motorworld.
Yeah.
They would like his tour. It was I forgot what he called them. The world's best drives or something like that.
DVD only sort of. Yeah.
And it was him and Hammond in both of them.
Yeah.
And they absolutely epitomised Top Gear. And you have to remember that they'd done it with relative freedom of what needed to be brought. I mean, it was under the Top Gear brand, as far as I'm aware. So the BBC had investment in that brand. Yeah. But as far as it was supposedly, when he was interviewed, it was us doing what we want to do.
Yeah.
And for those who haven't seen it, it's kind of like a relay road trip, isn't it? They go to the best places in the world and they drive the best cars in the world. And of course, it doesn't end at that.
Yeah.
So what you've got is these kind of naff little bantery games they're having with each other.
Yeah.
And it'll be things like, if you lose this race, you have to wear a T-shirt that says, I love James May.
Crazy. They're crazy guys.
And they're racing around. You got Hammond's going, I don't want to have to wear the T-shirt and all this. And Clarkson, I'm not wearing that T-shirt, power, and all this. And it was like, and the next day, like, Hammond would have to wear a top, and he'd be really like, oh, I'm so embarrassed wearing this T-shirt.
Yeah.
And it was all based in like, there's an element of homophobia to the whole thing. Because like then it would be, if you lose this race, you've got to wear cropped trousers.
Yeah.
And it was just constantly like, they call it, in America, they call it fag discourse. And I know that's a horrible word, but it's this constant banter and mockery of someone else being less than 100% heterosexual.
Yeah.
Which is nobody.
Yeah.
Basically,
yes, exactly. Yeah.
Basically, nobody's that straight. I'm sorry. You know, I think that a lot of Top Gear listeners, and that divisive, it's literally that kind of conservative viewpoint.
Yeah.
Of, no, I'm 100% safe because I fart any other feelings that come through to me. I've got my electroshock therapy ready for that. I think there's a bit of that.
Isn't that, and like you say, in a way, isn't that ironic after the outpouring of, it's almost like a backlash from the outpouring of love.
Yeah, exactly.
Hammond,
we adored them for that.
Yeah, exactly. The kind of humanistic
We
element
loved the way May was quite camp.
Yeah.
We liked the way that Hammond was metrosexual. We liked those things about them.
Yeah.
But they felt so emasculated by it. Well, maybe not the case of May, because he seems a bit oddly above it quite often. But they constantly have to reinforce their heterosexuality and manliness.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, we ended up with a show that a lot of people saw as misogynistic, as old-fashioned, of not being progressive, and
borne out by by a fist of Clarkson connecting with a chin of one of his producers.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is whenever you end up in a situation like this, where you have a conservative viewpoint and a liberal viewpoint, is that you get people defending the undefendable.
I was amazed at that when that fracas kicked off. Like we say, regardless of what you think of Clarkson as a producer or as the thinking behind this new old Top Gear, ultimately he's punched one of his a colleague.
Well, gave him a verbal down-dressing. That went on so long and so loud that residents of the hotel were watching from the windows and complaining before landing the punch on him and subsequently then taking himself to management for dismissal. I mean, that's the important thing you have to remember is that Clarkson himself, after being defended on these ridiculous things before, and some of them were unfair. You know, some of them were unfair. The eeny, meeny, mouth thing was unfair on Clarkson.
Yeah, I think that was
just a point
a bit of
where,
a witch hunt. That was,
it were a witch hunt, no doubt about it. But he knew at that point, you don't punch people.
Yeah.
You certainly don't be a massive perm-headed diva at the same time.
Yeah.
Which is what he was being over a frigging hot lunch.
Yeah.
And you've got these people.
The masculinity of it, and then having this proper little hissy fit over it. Yeah, the irony of that really as
exactly.
well.
And then what the madness ensued, and what you got was this spectrum of defence, which ranged from the kind of semi-reasonable, well, he'd been out all day, just wanted a hot meal, that's what he expected. He's a very highly stressed man in a powerful position, and sometimes, if and you've got people saying, if I got punched at work, I'd come in the next day. No, probably got people saying that. I believe there are some people that do get punched at work and come in the next day. No problem. That does happen. It's unacceptable. It shouldn't happen. But in some cases, it's actually, it's water under the bridge. I accept that. The other end of the spectrum was sending the producer death threats.
Yeah.
Like, that's the level. It went to a point where people would... That's a crime.
Yeah, exactly.
That is absolutely
it's not a joke
100% a crime to do. To actually show that you have gone out and proactively threatened someone else's life is a fray. You can't get away from that.
And ultimately, like you say, completely ironic, given that it's Clarkson who walks himself and hands himself in.
That's it.
To then have this conspiracy that... the producer and that the BBC were out to get him. It's like, well, I'm afraid Clarkson made that very important first move there. You can't death threat someone for, why didn't you move out of the way of Clarkson's punch, you idiot? It's your fault.
Asking for it.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Please existing in front of Clarkson.
Existing.
Selfish bugger. And what we saw from that is especially when you look back at it, is the colour of that support, so to speak.
Yeah.
And it was, it kind of reached its kind of peak. It became embodied as a tank.
Oh God!
Driving.
I remember that now. Oh my God! I'd forgotten about
to the BBC headquarters.
A tank.
With
excellent choice.
Someone
of vehicle.
dressed badly as the Stig, with a petition organiser dressed as what's the old car dealer programme from back in past. Dodgy car dealer used to wear a brown long coat and a hat.
Yes, I know what you mean, but
and that
Arthur Daly
type thing. If UKIP had put on a protest.
That would have looked exactly
as conservative as that, and as badly shabbily put together as to have some naff, low rent tank with a badly dressed Stig and an Arthur Daly character with the whole thing plastered in posters, driven into the BBC, as if that's going to make any difference to the fact that the person they admire has gone to his management and said, I have done something completely unacceptable. And had gone to the press subsequently and said it's unacceptable. And they'd gone to James May. And James May had said, he's a bloody idiot. That's unacceptable. And they'd gone to Hammond and he'd gone, I just bumped into a car, I'm hilarious. Did you know about my crash? Buy my book.
It's now available in audio and ebook format.
That's what happened. But there was something within everybody, and we all stopped and we all went, hang on. Now Top Gear is unshackled. The ball and chain has gone. This is what they've been complaining about for the best part of 1.5 decades of making series, that the BBC's making them do these stupid things and they want to do proper film and they want to make proper show that's got none of this falling over and whatever. And we hear Amazon Studios, Bezos,
that's it.
All this millions, the best part. I mean, what was the fund for this? Was it 700 million?
No, I think it was 130 million for 3 series.
Right, for 3 series. I got
apparently,
ridiculous numbers.
But exactly, that's only one number, isn't it?
From one of the richest companies in the world, independent streaming platform, doesn't have to go to distributors. Doesn't have to be accepted by anybody. And we all sat and waited, didn't we? All waited.
Like,
and we
what are they going to do?
At the same
what
time,
are they going to do?
the same time, we're thinking, hang on, the old Top Gear.
Yeah, that's still a BBC-owned programme.
That
they have
can
the right
continue.
to continue, and it, as you say, it existed before Clarkson, so that was the argument, wasn't it? It can continue after.
Exactly, and the division, people suddenly took sides.
Yeah.
So you got a lot of people saying, brilliant, you've got rid of what was wrong with Top Gear.
Yeah.
Clarkson and co. And you got people on the other side saying, brilliant, you've got what wrong with Top
BBC.
Gear. The BBC.
Yeah.
And they both backed their collective horses.
Yeah.
So then we went through that absolute mess
Yeah.
of who should, and we suddenly realised that we had no idea collectively who we wanted. I mean, there was a lot of sport. I mean, Steve Coogan would have been a brilliant one, I still think.
Yeah.
And basically, I mean, they ended up employing about half the population, didn't they, in the end?
I think they did. They went for more is better, kind of, just divvy it up a bit.
It was like, we'll just have something for everybody. It was like,
something will stick.
It was BBC by the numbers checkbox ticking, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was like, do we have this? Has someone got one leg? Brilliant, boom, we'll have that, no problem. It was that inclusive. It was that inclusive.
Yeah.
And we were fuming and we were furious about it. The Matt LeBlanc thing seemed oddly good as a decision. Everything else seemed terrible.
Well, you see, I think there was a lot of what the hell is Matt LeBlanc doing on it, and as we know, sort of, I guess this classed in the present. You know, that ironically, that's the one that people had probably the most trouble swallowing, and has come out probably the best of the whole lot of that first series.
It's funny the way we are about it, because what happens is someone says, oh, this celebrity as a car presenter, and then a group of people go, he's proper into cars, he's proper into, or she's proper into cars, because he once owned a Mustang. You know, it's like they'll just hang on. And here's the thing, everyone loves cars. Harsh truth. That's it. That's why we have so many bloody listeners into this show.
Exactly.
Pester us all the time. Everybody loves
Everyone loves cars.
That's a fact. So you could have picked anyone. And I like the idea of Jodie Kidd. I like the idea of Coogan. I like the idea of Sabrina. Is it Sabrina?
Sabine Schmidt.
Sabine, that's the one. From the Ring Taxi. And I kind of thought, I think a lot of people thought, well, can we have a Top Gear that's progressive? Which is still going to be fun and exciting and cover all this. And can we build a team? And
maybe not as conservative with a small C.
And we can't. That's what we've been. Because guess what? They went out and they made exactly the same show as before. And you got a bunch of people desperately trying to imitate.
I know. I really wish they'd have gone a truly different way with it. I think they were stuck between a rock and a hard place, weren't they? They weren't sure what to do, and like you say, so we'll have the same old format, but put a lot of different presenters in, and maybe see if that's enough of a change. But I think I'd have liked to have seen. I don't know what. I can't answer what I'd have liked to have seen, but I would have liked to have seen something different. And the funny thing, like, just to go back on it, because I just thought about that, but the funny thing with Matt LeBlanc, the whole, you can't have an American on it, he's being rubbish. I mean, people forget how vitriolic they were about James May when he first arrived. People were not keen on James May the moment he arrived, and then, he's probably, like you say, he's probably one of the better. He's probably the best of the three. I think personally.
I would watch.
Yeah,
I mean, this is
I've watched him take a lawnmower apart and put it back together again.
Exactly,
because it's James May.
I will walk into a room purposefully and sit down and proactively watch anything James May has done. If something Hammond's Made's come on,
I'd actively throw my TV out the window.
I have to admit, I wouldn't hang around. I'd be off in that situation.
Absolutely.
I'd watch stuff Clarkson's done or whatever, and they've really defined themselves.
Absolutely, I think so.
And I haven't got much of a bad word to say about James May, I have to admit, on that respect. Go in there. So Top Gear, the brand Top Gear, just carried on being. And it's still a mess. It's still an absolute mess now. And they just constantly seem to think that they can just have someone doing the skids.
Well, maybe it'll change now.
With an intermittent dry joke in the middle of it.
Maybe it'll change now. You've got, the sort of the format and not the format, but the program and the audience has sort of spoken, and the glimmer of hope in LeBlanc, that people have focused on him. Oh, he's actually quite funny. He's quite dry. He's got, done, and maybe that's it. Unless you get someone else in with the kudos in air quotes of a Chris Evans, or someone who can lead as like a duo or a trio. Maybe it will be, the Matt LeBlanc show, and because of that, really separates itself out from the bants of, trio or duo and goes somewhere different.
I think that's I got faith in LeBlanc. I really have faith in him, especially when you learn that he knew they were doing it wrong.
Yeah.
He knew that Chris Evans was doing it wrong.
Yeah.
You can't turn Top Gear into TFI Friday.
Yeah, absolutely not. No.
And that's no detriment to TFI Friday.
Yeah, exactly.
It's amazing.
Correct,
You can't turn it into Don't Forget Your Toothbrush.
Yeah.
You can't turn it into Big Breakfast.
Yeah.
But those are all brilliant shows.
Yeah.
I do think LeBlanc can do it.
Yeah.
I do think it hinges on finding the right people and him being seen as a good showrunner.
Yeah.
He knows what people like.
Yeah.
He was an amazing actor in Friends.
Yeah.
He played Joey. It was his idea to play Joey as stupid.
Oh, right.
It was not supposed to be like that.
Yeah.
He went in there, and he made that decision. He's a smart.
Yeah, I think people forget that though. I mean, if you watch stuff like, it's gone out of my head now. The stuff he's made with Tamsin and Grieg and
I know. What's that one
Mangan.
called? It's not episodes, is it? Episodes?
Yes, episodes. Yeah.
Exactly. Which is actually, incidentally, random facts. Random facts.
Random facts.
Episodes is filmed in England.
Oh, I knew that one. Yeah.
You knew that one.
I know that one. But our many listeners might not. There you go. So I think you're right. He needs to grab it with both hands and run with it a little bit. And I mean, the thing is, people forget, like when May were in an introduction, there was a bit of a fracas about it and people were vitriolic about it, but Top Gear were not that successful at that point. They got, they could swap, I think his name was Jono, wasn't it? The Australian guy, Jono or something like that. Swap him out for May and it were a deal, but not a big deal,
Yeah.
Now Top Gear's got to to that mass appeal that everything's under spotlight, isn't it? That they weren't in when they reintroduced Top Gear back in 2000. They could get stuff wrong, like you say. They had the opportunity, and I think maybe if people went back and watched a 2001 episode, they would realise how far it's come and how wrong, in terms of the current format, or what became Grand Tour format, how different it was back then, and how much they had changed it subtly through the series without people noticing in the beginning. It's a difficult thing to...
Well, we can have a little chat, after we've discussed the Grand Tour. We can have a little chat about what we'd like to see.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Put our money where our mouths are. But, the Grand Tour is out. It's finally out.
And can I say, I think we're in an ideal position to talk about this, because in true internet style, we have not watched a single episode,
we have not,
which means we are more than qualified to talk about this.
I would have it no other way. I have watched the trailer, and I am basing my comment on the comments of others, as it should be. And as is the way.
And I remember when we talked about this a few weeks ago, we were chatting about it, you said you would have no qualms telling us for why you would not be watching the Grand Tour. And I would like to hear, I'm sure our listeners would. Well, I mean, obviously I've made myself quite clear by bailing at, series 15.
You did. Oh, but moral reasons.
Moral reasons.
Why
have you not slapped your £80 down on a bit of Prime? Get your cheap delivery and fast delivery and get a bit of GT into the bargain.
Well, I mean,
for why?
I have a odd connection with Amazon Studios, don't I?
You do?
I do.
That's true. It's even more complicated than that.
I'm a big fan of Amazon Studios. I'm a big fan of what Amazon are doing. I want all the best for them.
Yeah, that's true.
Go out and watch, Manchester by the Sea. And these other movies that I can't even name. I can't even name the other movies. The Wall, which is coming out. That was actually written by an amateur screenwriter. They're doing some good stuff. Good for them.
Yeah.
Go out and watch Transparent.
Is that for why? Because of the money that's been sunk into these three old stooges? Is that what
They could have made my movie with that money. Could have made a bloody brilliant version. But no, my issue is one of morals.
Yeah.
And I like watching Clarkson. I like watching his old stuff. I like watching his new stuff.
Yeah.
I like what the man does. I like the way that he speaks. I find him entertaining. I don't agree with his politics. I don't agree with his views. He's a massive toff that lives in his own little private part of the world and earns, what is it? Oh, God, this is ridiculous amount of money.
More money than we'll ever see.
Yeah. Well, has he got a shed, though?
Has he got a shed? Has he got a successful podcast?
May's got a shed.
Oh, that's
May
true.
knows the deal. I've no particular affection for the man himself.
No.
But, I like his television, I like his entertainment.
Yeah.
But you don't punch
I quite
your
agree.
co-workers.
I quite agree.
You don't punch your co-workers, and then because you're a laugh, because you have access to posh things and money, you don't just be welcomed back in.
I agree, and I think it's a horrible. It gives me the willies a bit, really, when you look at that, the sort of the way it was handled. That sort of, give him 6 weeks of a bit of a bad time. Make it, I feel sad. I'm very bad. I'll put a little video out. Go through that. It felt like the media machine just ran through the wrangle for 4 weeks, and then it's like, right, he's done his time.
Yeah.
He's done his time for punching someone in the face.
What you got next, Clarkson?
Yeah, that's it.
I'm
Come on.
I'm with you.
That's it. We forgive you now. It was only a quick punch.
Hanging on your every word. What you saying now? What you saying now? Oh, that's a slight racist joke. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah,
That is
exactly.
because he's telling it like it is.
Telling it like it is.
He doesn't hold it back, does he?
No, that's it. You can go over the edge just this once, Clarkson.
But there was part of me, and I think a lot of people were like, well, you've got what you wanted now, haven't you? You get to go with your trio because they've all teamed up with him.
Yeah, and Andy Willman, the producer. You've got your favourite producer.
You've got all the crew.
You've got your script writer.
You've got all your crew that don't mind being punched
exactly.
or threatened with the concept of being punched.
Or a bit quicker to move away when you do swing. Yeah.
Who don't complain. And you've got all the money in the world.
Yeah.
All the money. So now you get
to make
Clarkson. Now you get
to
make a classy, decent, sophisticated bit of art. On
a new format, on this new channel, this new media
that can be streamed to everyone in the world.
Exactly.
That's controversial. At the moment. So
what are you going to do, Clarkson?
And then we see the trailer.
Oh dear.
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. Quite a lot.
This pile of shite.
Yes.
I mean, seriously. What?
Oh, it were, I think if you'd have cobbled together a highlights reel from old new Top Gear and just put the Grand Tour logo on the front.
Could have got away with it.
You could have got away with it. You're like, this is new. Yeah. This is clever. This is
it's a 4K, post processing.
Upscale it.
Amazing.
This is it.
And there were this dead funny bit in the trailer where Clarkson did something stupid and Hammond was like really angry and May was just like fed up.
Yeah, and May rolled his eyes and he was like, that's clever that.
And then they raced some really fast cars in a straight line. And then like Clarkson stalled a supercar. And
crazy, they're crazy.
It's radical, and apparently it's radical. And now it's in front of a live audience, but not always the same live audience.
In a studio, it's not quite the same studio. They move it round a bit.
You only have to read the comments to know that this is exactly the same. It is just worse.
Yeah.
It is just all of the worst characteristics that we have. It's like when a really bad movie comes out that's really popular and then they do the sequel.
Yeah.
And
it's just the same.
It's like Ted 2.
Yeah.
It's like when they come dancing and we're so funny. We're just going to do all.
We'll just do it all again.
Do it all again. And then they're like, what do you mean 50% of our audience have dropped off already? What do you mean
it's the most pirated show ever? Because people won't cough up the 80 quid for Amazon Prime.
There's lots of excuses for that.
Oh, right,
the big excuses. They haven't made it available in all territories, and I want to stream it via Plex in my home network, so it's the only way. I've got Amazon Prime, honest,
I've got Prime. I just want to keep it forever.
And this is the thing.
Keep it on my golden hard drive.
This is the thing about when you adopt this type of audience.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to be mean but this overly emotional, overreactive audience of people who idealise people and hang on their every word and defend them. The problem is those people don't pay for content.
Yes.
If they don't have to.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the same person that comes to you
Yeah.
and defends Clarkson and bleats on about how the economy's better after leaving the EU.
Yeah.
It's the same person that says, "Oh, I've got this USB stick where you can get all the Amazon shares
Yeah,
for free."
exactly.
That's the same
That is the same
demographic,
yeah.
I'm afraid. That's just the way it is.
Yeah. I think
So that's what they're landed, that's what they're stuck with now. And
do you think this, because they've got 3 series, do you think this is going to, like you say, it's just going to crescendo and then fade to black? Because ultimately it's an experiment that's not going to work because of them, that kind of demographic, those kind of people,
no,
you know?
No, it's not, because you have to understand the business philosophy of Amazon.
So, yeah.
They don't have the same philosophy.
Goals as, yeah.
It's very different. It's fundamental to how they do everything, how Bezos does everything. And the thing is, okay, traditional business model, I sell you a thing, you pay for it.
Yeah, job done.
Brill, I've made some money, thank you
Yeah,
very much,
yeah.
hope you enjoy it, I'm off.
Yeah.
The Amazon business model is, you need a thing, I'll give it you as quickly as possible, as
Yeah.
cheaply as possible. I don't care if I lose money,
Yeah.
because you're a retained customer,
Yeah.
you'll always come back to me, the competition has died, and therefore
You're a happy customer.
the valuation of my business
Yeah.
is massive.
Yeah.
And that's how Amazon works. It
Yeah.
works by acquisition of customers that are satisfied
Yeah.
with what they have received
Yeah.
and don't go elsewhere. That's the idea of Prime. The whole idea of Prime
Yeah.
is you go to Amazon for everything.
Yeah.
You get your TV,
just
you get your
easiest that
delivery.
way, yeah.
It's the easiest way you're satisfied with that.
Frictionless.
That's it, exactly. So that is what that. So it doesn't matter. That money that has been earmarked for Top Gear
Yeah.
will get spent just the same
Yeah.
as they're spending millions upon millions on hiring A-list actors,
Yeah.
actresses, writers, directors to make these movies that they're making.
Well,
to
they never
try and win awards.
They technically never make any money, do they? Really?
They
With
don't.
Amazon. It's just because
They
it's
don't.
just ploughed into something
Exactly.
else. Yeah.
They don't. They never make money. They are just worth more.
Yeah.
So the whole idea of Top Gear is you're buying the time, you're buying the production, you're buying Clarkson and
Yeah.
the team. You're buying the IP effectively.
Yeah.
But you're not intending to make any money from
no.
it. Because everyone's saying like, well, does it work because you sign up to Prime and they make money? They don't make money. They're not interested in making
Yeah.
money. They're just interested in you always going to Amazon to
Yeah.
get everything because they
It's
want
a very
future
multifaceted
where-
approach, isn't it?
Exactly. They want a world where you're watching the Grand Tour
Yeah.
and dribbling into your potato chips with laughter
Yeah.
as they drone in
Yeah.
more food and goods for you
Yeah.
to consume. That's what they want.
That's
They just
the
want
plan.
to own you as a customer.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. And the thing is, there is a massive worldwide audience
Yeah.
for this.
That's true.
For this
It's bigger than
nonsense.
ever, isn't it? Yeah, really.
It's huge. Just look at how big right-wing politics has become. I don't want to necessarily
get into
call
politics.
Top Gear right-wing as
Yeah.
such, but it's definitely more on the conservative-leaning side and appeals. The fact is, it's this issue of, not all Trump voters are racists,
Yeah.
but all racists are Trump voters,
Yeah.
and that's the problem. What you're going to have with this is that the kind of a certain demographic of people
Yeah.
are all going to just jump on the Grand Tour, and we will see the way the Grand Tour behaves.
Yeah.
Because what we basically have is we have a show
Yeah.
that its genesis was being chased by rednecks in the deep south
Yes.
after taunting them with liberal views.
Yeah.
They literally washed that off their cars.
Wash that off their cars.
And
yes,
it has
that's
not changed since.
That
now
is an
what we
excellent
have
metaphor. Yeah.
is we have the mouthpiece
Yeah.
of those very same
Yeah,
people.
that's very
is
true.
now the highest budget.
Yeah.
And it will always be bigger, and it will always be better as long as it has the most money.
Yeah.
And it will probably go. I don't know. I mean, May has already started to motion towards that he needs to leave.
Yeah.
May is saying that he's getting too old. He's not getting too old.
He's
May,
getting uncomfortable.
May is happy sitting in a shed, taking apart a guitar, and
Yeah.
having you sit and watch that.
Yeah.
He's happy doing. He will make brilliant television. He's probably still working with the BBC. I
Yeah,
imagine.
I think
they
so,
wouldn't want
yeah.
to lose him. He wouldn't want to lose.
I think they've
them.
all technically got contracts still, haven't
Yeah.
they? Just not for Top Gear. Yeah.
That's it,
Yeah.
that's it.
Well,
And-
maybe not Hammond if you can help it. But
No, Channel 5 for Hammond.
Channel 5 for
That's where
Hammond.
we're going for
Oh,
that.
yeah. It's do or die for him. It's Grand Tour or Channel 5.
That's a big deal. When May says that, that's a big deal. Because he doesn't need to say it. It's bloody obvious, and it's spin.
Yeah.
It's spin because he knows that he's got to get
Time,
off this.
he can get out of there if he needs to. Yeah.
He's going to have to the hot air balloon. The gas is stuck open, and the sooner he jumps, the less
painful the fall.
I'm afraid. And that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
There is a chance that the new Top Gear that we see, with Matt LeBlanc at the helm, could be something brilliant.
Yeah.
It's got nothing to lose now.
No, exactly. I think that's it. Maybe, as you say, first series, it just were never going to work. You could argue that, couldn't you? Yeah. Maybe you should have said, if Evans was really keen on it, maybe you should have let it drop and picked it up rather than a continuation. I think that's it. The continuation was a bad idea, but now people have. You've got breathing space now, haven't you? People are maybe not going to tune into it, but that's the beauty of the BBC. You don't have to tune into it because it's been paid for regardless. You've not got that commercial need to get bums on seats to watch it. You can have people. Yeah. You can nurture that show in a different manner, which is probably what they should have done in the first place. But hopefully, I agree. It could turn into something very good, very, better than, very different, I
mean, so sort of talking about the future and where that might, we're sort of going in that direction now. It doesn't necessarily have to be Top Gear.
No.
Like, Top Gear might just die off.
Well, I mean, you could argue, couldn't you, with the traditional, if you picture Top Gear and it's DB9s and V12s and Lamborghinis and chasing people around tracks on P1s, it's like, that's not going to go on forever. We've talked about the electric future, and at the moment you get the idea that they're not that sort of Grand Tour demographic, and those three, at least their characters are probably quite anti-EV, really, and
they would come across as.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what the shtick that they're on at the moment.
Previously, I mean, I've never seen proactive support.
No, exactly. That's what I mean.
Top Gear, as the Clarkson trio, I've never seen those people go out and say electric cars are brilliant until it was basically rammed down their neck.
Yeah. Exactly.
And they couldn't deny it. It was like they were denying it all that time.
And maybe that's, like you say, where one of the differentiation can come from. A new Top Gear won't be Top Gear. It could be something.
Well, I mean, there's the chance that cars become inherently the kind of domain of the progressive. I mean, what we've got is, people are kind of self-certified geeks. I mean, that's a tricky area, and it's fashionable, whatever. But you could get a lot of people really into cars again because they were always put off by the pollution aspect, and now you've got them coming along. And there's a lot happening. I mean, they've not been
not want to be associated with them three.
Well, that's it. So what we could see is quite a liberal movement outside of BBC itself. But a good place for it to happen is in the BBC. I think what I'd like. I mean, I do like Matt LeBlanc. I mean, I'm thinking about where I get this kind of content from. I mean, I get a lot of it from YouTube.
Yeah, very much so.
YouTube satisfies that quite nicely. You find great channels like regular car reviews. I sort of watch Fast Lane Truck. Big rig videos. I love. Motor Trend is the big one, isn't it?
Yeah, that's quite high
Engine
dollar.
Masters.
Engine Masters and all that. I mean, Motor Trend, that's it. You almost can't say Motor Trend because it's there's so many niches within that. Dirt Every Day. I love Dirt Every Day. Yeah,
brilliant. And of course, the one that I'm seeing most shared on Facebook is Roadkill.
Yeah.
Roadkill really sort of grabbed a hold of that spirit of the road trip in Top Gear and replicated it. Sadly, I don't think Finnegan and Freiberger have the chemistry.
I think the thing with Roadkill is it's a really interesting one because I think, like you say, the genesis of it and that how it came about and the road trips and all that sort of stuff. There's just a genuine love for cars there. And because of the nature of the beast, they're all old clapped out, Americana and where they are in.
I don't think it is a love for cars.
I think it is with Freiberg.
I think it's a love for engines.
Well, that's true. It could be a love for engines, actually. Yeah, you're right.
I think that's a very different thing.
Yeah, that's true.
And what I don't get from roadkill is I don't get people getting in a battered old car and going, oh, I kind of love these dials and knobs and buttons, and I love the way the seat moves.
But I do think it's not morphed quite quickly into, like I say, it maybe is more engine related now, but I think it's also morphed into, there's aspects of that Top Gear-y sort of conservative, you know, dyno juice, you know, that kind of, hey, you know, big V8s and all that sort of stuff. And I don't necessarily think that's, I don't know, I don't think that's where it maybe started, you know. I think in a way of, like I say, in that kind of EV denying, oh, dirty, horrible, electric vehicles are horrible. I think the roadkill aura that's kind of sucked that in, that kind of feeling, the demographic.
It's going to. I mean, because it's American and
it's because it's old American cars.
American car culture is very traditional. It buries its head in the past because the past is bloody brilliant and very romantically, you know, remembered in our hearts and our minds. Really, I mean, that's a very American way to say it.
Hearts and minds, winning hearts and minds.
You know, that's the way it is. But at some point, someone's going to develop an electric motor system that drops straight in where an old small block Chevy did on its old engine mounts and deliver more power and torque, and you'll be able to replace the fuel cell with a battery cell. And people go, hang on a second, this has got crap loads of torque, like a flat torque curve, and it just makes someone's going to make it exciting. But that's us getting down the electric car road again. I don't see a presenting panel for a car show. I don't see. I mean, I love Jay Leno. And his car stuff, but I mean, I want to watch him.
No, I can watch that
show.
for
You know, he's a proper car. I mean, he's one of the biggest car nerds out there. His toy box is insane. I do like people like Jodie Kidd, but then it's very easy to kind of jump on this, like, oh, but she's a girl, she likes cars, and don't you know, she once raced one.
That's it.
It's just, it becomes clamouring. Like I say, Steve Coogan is one that always comes back but I think we like that because we kind of think Alan Partridge is old-fashioned and conservative, and I mean, Craggy could literally be driving around in a Rover 600.
Even today.
Literally doing that, you know. I don't know. I mean, do you have any idea of a dream team?
I don't know, because I don't know what... I don't know, because I don't...
I won't put it like this. What do you think it takes? What do you think matters? Because don't you think we just focus on the wrong things, like whether or not they're a massive car fan or whether or not they can drive? Because here's the thing. Clarkson can't drive.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you don't realise how many of those shots are done with other people.
He has stunt drivers for a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff on top. Hammond can bloody drive. There's no doubt about the boy can drive. I mean, there's some epic shots of him drifting 911 around the track. Amazing, you know. And May can't drive. And I even question that May is that big a car. Not really. I mean, he likes the detail, but the guy's a history nut. He's an engineering nut.
Yeah, that's true. He's very much engineering.
Clarkson is the epitome of someone who is car obsessed. He judges people by the cars. He feels judged by the car. He's totally tapped into the emotion of car ownership. But isn't a particularly amazing driver. And hasn't got a particularly amazing car collection or anything like that. I mean, a lot of the cars he's bought are a bit
shonky.
Well, I mean, the GT40 were a good choice, but I can't. There's nothing else that highlights
that springs to mind. No, I don't know. I mean,
so what is it? What are the values? What does someone need to have? I mean, they have to understand. They have to have the ability to make an emotional connection. With a mechanical object.
Definitely. I think that's high. That's the key
and
point.
A lot of us have that, but we struggle to communicate that. We struggle to identify what it is. We struggle to put a poetic slant on when we describe it to other people. So when other people hear about someone talking about
even if they don't get it, that's it. It's almost like if you don't get it or you're not into it, you can still appreciate it.
And you understand. When someone says it's the sound of the V8 rumbling through the firewall that just slightly vibrates the steering wheel of the 5-litre Mustang.
But you see, I don't know whether I'll ever be able to work it out, because I think it's almost it's almost if you're too into cars, you know, you can't make that decision in a way. I don't know. I think you can make part of that decision, or you can choose. You're going to think, what are the values? But you're just a facet, aren't you, of what other, like I say, it's not just about being into cars. I don't know. I can't. It's a bloody hard question, that.
Exactly. That's why it's so difficult, and that's why someone like Clarkson is so
should have an answer on it. I should have it. Yeah, this is it. I was trying to think, like, well, how would you describe Clarkson?
That is why he was a pioneer. That's why that is why he was able to get into Top Gear, change it, walk out of Top Gear with 2 new presenters, while everything else from that made the 90s Top Gear work and be better went on to do a show which was people don't think much of. It's not, you can't look at this like an Excel spreadsheet and try and get stuff to add up. But what Clarkson does have is he's always had his finger on the pulse of what we think about cars.
Yeah, I think that is true.
And I've always admired that.
Yeah.
Because he will review a Skoda. Not so much now, but he previously would have reviewed a Skoda and reviewed it as a Skoda and actually said, here's your problem with this new Fabia.
Yeah.
It's a Skoda. People aren't going to buy the badge.
Yeah.
And he would do that, and I love
quite honest about it. Yeah.
And you need someone who has that ability to look at any car and find value.
Yeah.
Find a conflict. That's important. Find a conflict in that vehicle. Like he will look at he'll look at the old Monaro, the VXR 8 or whatever it became.
Yeah.
And he will say, but it's a Vauxhall.
Yeah.
But he'll also say, but it's brilliant. And that's fantastic conflict.
Yeah.
And that's what his reviews were like. His reviews would sell you the concept that all was lost.
Yeah.
He would tell you.
Right up until.
And then he'd say, and then you switch off the traction control.
Yeah.
And then we'd have this completely, and he'd be telling you how you fall in love with it, how it's incredible, how it has passion and soul.
Yeah.
Or he'd tell you why something's flawed and could be brilliant. And you kind of loved it for its flaws.
Do you think in some respects then you could argue he is, like I say, he's a social commentator that through the prism of vehicles?
Yes.
That's the kind of person you need. You need someone who is, like you say, utterly obsessed with cars, but not in an engineering, not in a mechanical, maybe not even in an emotional way, although there is emotion in it. It's in a social context, in that sort of world-changing,
not just
icon of
life affirming.
Yeah,
that's what he's doing. He's taking cars and he's giving us an understanding of life through cars.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's saying, like, this is flawed, like some people are flawed.
Yeah.
Or like you think you're flawed.
Yeah.
But it has this brilliance within it that has to be appreciated. But it doesn't compensate for everything yet.
Yeah.
But there's always the next version. And he will come along with these kind of old tropes about, you know, Germans being too Teutonic and about third world countries producing kind of wacky but flawed, completely naff vehicles. And you would go, you know, the underdog is coming, the establishment is going to fall apart.
Yeah.
And I don't know, if there was an automotive journalist doing that right now, I think we'd know.
Yeah, I think we would know.
I mean, regular car reviews is the popularity of that because that's what they do on regular car reviews. Exactly the same principle of taking a car, describing why it should be great, telling us why it isn't.
Yeah.
Telling us who buys it, why they buy it, the difference it makes. I mean, they have. There's an episode of Regular Car Reviews, which is a YouTube channel that everyone should watch.
Everyone should be watching that.
I think it's just regular. Is it just Regular Cars?
I think it is Regular Cars.
Regular Cars is the title on it's a channel on YouTube, and there's a magnificent episode about the PT Cruiser, which we routinely mock, and we mock the type of people that buy PT Cruisers. But it makes an outstanding case for the difference it makes to those owners and why.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that, like, a lot of the time, regular cars as well, maybe the difference there is because maybe through necessity more than anything else, they're older cars, and so you're viewing them in a kind of historical context as well as a social sort of, you know, you can look back on them and what they mean, and that does allow them to you can find redemption in any car, really. There's something about every car. It says something about the people who drive it, or the time it was made, or why it was made, or
the difference it made.
Yeah, or the difference it made, yeah. I think you're right. A bit niche, but I think, yeah, it's the same concept, definitely.
I mean, shall we just conclude that the king is dead and we do not yet get to long live the king?
Yeah, the king is dead, ...
Yeah.
One point in the future, we might be able to say long live the king,
Yeah, there is no one there.
No.
But we welcome and embrace, and let's think hard.
Yeah, let's try and nurture that and
about
support
what matters.
That. Yeah.
About who might be out there, who's unknown.
Yeah.
No one is. Maybe they've got a YouTube channel or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
They could go.
Maybe they've got a highly successful podcast.
Maybe not.
In a shed.
Maybe that's someone who whitters on a bit.
A bit too long about.
Can't summarise a point to save their lives. But let's hope that there's someone. There is someone out there. There must be someone out there.
And as you say, now they have moved on to Prime, to a new media like that. That's like, maybe a bit restrictive. Maybe that leaves a vacuum that someone can fill in the mainstream on the BBC or.
I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen on the BBC because it has to go through a committee, and we make this mistake every time.
But do you not think it could be at least nurtured through the BBC? I agree. Like maybe it's waiting on YouTube or SoundCloud or somewhere, and hopefully it'll land somewhere that lets it get on its feet. That's what I mean.
Give it exposure.
Get it exposure. Give it that bit of a whoosh, to get going.
We cannot continue to watch car review shows based on the exclusivity of vehicles.
Yeah.
Of how clickbaity the title is.
Exactly.
We can't do that. We've got to start caring about what really matters.
Yeah.
Other than cheap tricks.
Yeah.
And cheap laughs.
Proper journalism. Proper, not just automotive.
Yeah, proper journalism. That's what it is.
Proper.
Journalism, which is beyond the subject matter, which isn't just saying, I tested a stereo and it sounded quite good.
Exactly.
And now I'm going to tell you how the knobs felt and everything else. As if that's
There's plenty of that these days. There's people out there. I think that's the thing. Maybe you could argue that's why some journalism's you can't see not the point in it anymore. You struggle with it because there are millions of people out there who can say the same kind of things about how soft these knobs were, and some people might, have a slightly better vocabulary to describe it, but ultimately...
I would hope they've got a better vocabulary than soft knob.
I don't know, I quite like that. It's soft knob, this. But, but ultimately they're just saying the same thing. They're talking about the tactility of this rotational device, rather than maybe maybe going further than that and talking about all the things. That's what I want. I want journalism about all the things through the prism of vehicles. That's not hard, is it?
Is that too much to ask?
Is that too much to ask?
I'll say this, right? Okay, so we are a conduit, which people can find a voice.
Yeah.
And we are on the internet, which is a library of data.
Yeah.
If the three of you listening know of
Clarkson, man.
If you know or have a suggestion or have an idea, we've got our webpage, haven't we?
Yeah.
men-in-sheds.com.
That was a good jingle, that was.
Which is
men-in-sheds.com.
You can go on there and we've got a blog and you can leave comments.
That's it, leave a comment.
And if you
like and subscribe.
If like and subscribe now. Amazon Prime available now. Get this show by drone. But you can let us know and we'll share the information.
I know we're hopefully telling you about things like regular cars, or like I like a bit of Ronnie Dahl on YouTube and all them kind of things. But you might say, hold on, there's this guy. What you're talking about there's this guy on YouTube. He's only got 3 subscribers, but he is the future, and we can check it all out together, and hopefully
we can, and we can talk about it.
Yeah.
If Breitbart can get a man from Wall Street elected as the anti-establishment president of America, then surely, through the power
of the internet,
we can
2 men in a shed
can replace this
Clarkson
gap that matters.
Yeah, so much to so many people.
Yeah, we do that. There we go.
And on that bombshell, I've been waiting all podcast to say that.
It will worth it.
It will worth it.
That was beautiful. Well done.
To our listeners.